Few conversations are as avoided as the one about what happens after we're gone. For many seniors, it's a constant silent thought, but one that rarely finds a space to be embraced with clarity and respect. Life prepares us for almost everything, except understanding the end with serenity. Dolores Cannon, a researcher respected for decades, dedicated a good part of her career to studying what lies beyond death. Her work isn't based on beliefs or rituals, but on consistent accounts from people who've had near-death experiences and deep regression sessions. According to her, the process of dying isn't an abrupt end, but a planned and conscious transition in which the soul continues to learn. This view has helped thousands of people deal with the fear, uncertainty, and anguish that often accompany old age. And it may, perhaps, help you too, with simple and direct answers about something we'll all face. If this topic touches on something you feel, it's worth continuing to listen, because understanding what comes next doesn't mean anticipating the end, but living the present with more peace. If you believe this content can comfort someone you love, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. According to Dolores, at the moment of death, there's no pain, fear, or confusion. The soul detaches from the body like someone taking off an old, worn-out garment. The body may have suffered, yes, but the soul, that deeper essence that dwells within each of us, simply observes calmly what's happening. Many people who've had near-death experiences report the same thing, a feeling of absolute peace, of total acceptance of returning home. There's no immediate judgment nor punishment. There's a silent, almost maternal welcoming. Dolores explains that this initial moment is like a calm awakening, where everything makes sense and where fear simply disappears. This transition isn't the same for everyone, but follows a common flow according to the level of consciousness and the experiences accumulated during life. Some souls immediately realize they've left the physical plane. Others take a little longer, especially when death is sudden, or when the person passes with feelings of guilt, attachment, or unresolved emotional issues. In these cases, there's a kind of support, as if they're received by guides who explain calmly what's happening. Dolores states that there's no rush in the spiritual realm. Everything happens in each soul's own time. There's no punishment or a place of eternal suffering. There is, however, learning. Even after death, we continue reflecting, reviewing choices, better understanding the bonds we created and the decisions we made. It's a continuous process, but much lighter than we imagine. Another essential point is that no one leaves alone. Even in moments when we feel isolated on earth, according to Dolores, there are always subtle presences accompanying us. At the moment of transition, these presences become clearer. Many people report reunions with deceased family members, with friends, or even with beings that transmit a feeling of love so strong that we can't compare it to anything experienced here. These presences don't judge us. They help us understand what happened, accept what we couldn't change, and move forward. This reunion is often described as one of the most emotional and transformative moments of the entire afterlife experience. Knowing this can bring comfort to those who fear passing without saying goodbye, or fear never seeing those they love again. Separation, according to this view, is only temporary and part of a larger cycle. Dolores Cannon also spoke about the importance of conscious choices while we're here. According to her, each gesture, each thought, each act of kindness or intolerance creates a kind of mark on the soul's energy field. After death, we're not judged by another being. We're the ones who review our own journey, observing with clarity how our actions impacted others. This process, called the life review by her, isn't punitive. It's an opportunity for deep learning, where we can see with distance and clarity everything that we previously saw only partially. For many, this becomes a chance for forgiveness, for understanding, for liberation. And that's why growing older can also be an opportunity to reframe, to look back with more gentleness, and to prepare the spirit with serenity. This preparation has nothing to do with resignation or giving up. On the contrary, according to Dolores, the souls who pass in peace are precisely those who manage to live with purpose until the end. Death doesn't interrupt life, it merely transforms the way we exist. Knowing this, many seniors begin to see the time they still have differently. Each conversation gains value. Each memory ceases to be just nostalgia and becomes a lesson. And even in the face of illness or physical limitations, there's an inner strength that strengthens. Knowing that the soul continues its journey on another plane with awareness and clarity helps to deal with present suffering with more lightness, not as an escape, but as a deeper understanding of one's own existence. This understanding also changes the way we see the loss of others. When a loved one passes, the pain is real, but despair can be replaced by a kind of gratitude. Gratitude for the time lived, for the memories shared, for the connection that isn't broken by death. Dolores said that the bonds between souls aren't lost. They transform, remaining alive in another dimension. Even when we can no longer see or touch someone, it doesn't mean that that person has ceased to exist. They're just in another stage of their journey. Understanding this helps in mourning, as it reframes the absence. And for many seniors who have already lost partners, children, or friends, knowing that these reunions are possible can bring relief and even hope. Physical absence doesn't need to be interpreted as an end, but as a pause, as part of a broader and continuous cycle. Another strong point in Dolores's view is that no soul leaves before its time. Even when death seems premature or unfair, there's a learning behind it. This doesn't mean we should accept suffering without questioning, but understand that there are larger processes than we can comprehend here. Each soul chooses, at deep levels, the main milestones of its existence, including the way it will pass. According to Dolores, this planning is done before birth with the goal of spiritual growth. Nothing is by chance. The pains, the joys, the encounters, and the farewells are part of a larger script, written based on what the soul needs to learn. When we look through this lens, we can perceive meaning even in the most difficult moments, and this can completely change the way we live the last years of life. It's common to hear that the end of life brings regrets. Dolores said that this feeling can be transformed into motivation. No matter the age, there's always time to do things differently, to ask for forgiveness, to give thanks, to create positive memories. The aging process doesn't have to be a decline. It can be a phase of great wisdom and reconnection with what's essential. When we look at death with serenity, we also begin to look at life with more intensity. Many seniors who've had access to this information report significant changes in their daily posture. They become lighter, more open, more present, because they understand that everything continues, that what is done here echoes there. That living well isn't just a rite, but a way to prepare the spirit for the next step, with dignity, clarity, and self-love. This spiritual preparation doesn't require great practices or complicated knowledge. According to Dolores, all that's needed is awareness, being present, taking care of one's own thoughts, seeking harmony with those around, and above all, accepting that we don't have control over everything. As we age, this acceptance becomes an ally. It doesn't mean passivity, but wisdom. Life is made of cycles, and each has its purpose. When we accept this truth, we stop fighting against time and begin to value it. The later phases of life take on another color. They're not a burden, but an opportunity for completion, to leave a legacy, to end stories with more peace. Dolores's view doesn't propose denying the pain of farewell, but understanding that it's part of a natural and necessary movement of return to our most essential state. Another interesting aspect that she addressed was the connection with other lives. Dolores studied thousands of accounts that indicated that the soul doesn't live a single existence. It returns, learns, experiences, evolves. And this awareness can also transform the way we deal with the now. Understanding that life continues, many seniors begin to value not only what they've done, but what they can still do. Even if little time remains, each choice still carries an impact. Each gesture of affection, each reconciliation, each word spoken with truth becomes a gift not only for those who receive it, but for the soul itself. Growing older, then, isn't losing relevance, but preparing for a new phase with more wisdom. It's continuing to build, even if the steps are slower and the actions more discreet. Dolores Cannon never promised absolute answers. What she offered was a new way of looking at old questions. Her work wasn't about convincing, but about inviting reflection. And that's what this video tries to do, open space for a broader, calmer, and truer understanding about what comes next. Not to anticipate the end, but so that each person can live it with dignity. When we listen carefully to these ideas, we may discover that life doesn't end with death, but that it changes shape. And with this new shape comes also a new kind of peace, a peace that begins now, while we're still here. A peace that can transform the remaining days into more meaningful days. Because when you understand what's to come, the present ceases to be a burden and becomes a real chance for renewal. This chance for renewal isn't limited to the physical. It's in the look in your eye, in your intentions, and in your openness to change, even in small ways. Dolores always emphasized that the soul is in constant motion, even when the body no longer responds with the same agility. Thinking about life after death is, in reality, thinking about the value of life now. Many seniors gain more clarity about what really matters. They let go of what doesn't serve them, forgive more easily, and connect with others in a more authentic way. It's not necessary to have answers for everything, but just the willingness to look inward. It's in this quiet introspection that the understanding arises that we're all on a journey. And that deep down, the fear of death is the fear of the unknown. When this unknown is understood, even partially, it ceases to be frightening and becomes part of the natural path of existence. There's also a practical aspect to reflecting on this topic. Many seniors avoid talking to their families about how they'd like to be remembered, what decisions they'd like to be made, or what values they'd like to leave behind. Dolores encouraged these conversations not as a closure, but as an affirmation of the awareness of who we are. Planning the end of life with serenity is an act of love for those who remain. It's not surrendering to death, but ensuring that, even in absence, the presence is still felt respectfully. Many family conflicts could be avoided if these issues were addressed with openness and respect. And those who are aging can lead this movement, showing that talking about the end isn't giving up on life, but celebrating it until the last moment with presence, clarity, and courage. This strengthens bonds and leaves positive marks that last beyond the farewell. Dolores also addressed the role of time in spiritual processes. The time we take to understand, forgive, or change is never wasted. Each soul has its rhythm, and respecting that rhythm is fundamental for a smooth transition. For many seniors, the feeling that time is running out can generate anguish. But when it's understood that the soul's time is different from clock time, this pressure diminishes. There's still time for what matters. There's still room to be better, to express love, to apologize, to smile with truth. What counts isn't how much time is left, but what's done with it. This change in perspective can bring more lightness to daily life, allowing the final phase of life to be lived with more fulfillment and less demand. And this lightness is reflected in the soul, preparing it for the next stage with more confidence. Many accounts studied by Dolores speak of a kind of spiritual waiting room where the soul rests before moving on to new experiences. This period, according to her, is for rest, reflection, and healing. There's no rush or requirement. It's a moment of care, as if the soul is enveloped by a peace that we don't fully experience here. Understanding this can help seniors who fear suffering after death or who believe they'll carry their pains and flaws forever. According to this view, there's a deep compassion in that realm. No one is punished for mistakes, but rather invited to understand and evolve. This doesn't diminish the responsibility for the acts committed, but shows that there's always the possibility of a fresh start. Even the oldest wounds can be treated. Even the most difficult choices can be understood with love and patience. It's common to hear that life is a school. Dolores took this idea seriously. Each experience, from the simplest to the most challenging, serves a greater purpose of learning. No one is here by chance. Even the pains that seem meaningless have a role in shaping the soul. This can bring a new perspective to difficult moments of the past. Instead of remorse, understanding may arise. Instead of revolt, acceptance. This change doesn't happen overnight, but begins with the willingness to see beyond appearances. When the senior understands that their story doesn't end with death, that each experience has left marks that remain with the soul, there's a new sense of value. Their life ceases to be a line that ends and becomes part of a continuous cycle where everything counts, everything teaches, and everything connects in ways that perhaps we'll only fully understand later. Dolores Cannon believed that the soul chooses the moment of departure, but not consciously, as if it were a common decision. She spoke of agreements made at deep levels, involving our learning and also that of those around us. Sometimes someone's departure provokes reflections, reconciliations, or awakens feelings that were dormant. This doesn't mean that the pain is less, but it can offer meaning to the loss. For the senior who feels they're close to the end, this idea can bring peace. Knowing that there's a greater purpose, even when we can't see it, helps to soften the fear. There's no need to understand all the whys now. Just accept that we're in a flow that leads us to something greater. This surrender, when done with serenity, transforms the way one lives and the way one departs. It's a peaceful farewell, with a light and conscious soul. The lightness of the soul at the moment of departure comes not only from what was done, but from what was understood. Dolores explained that, upon crossing the threshold between life and death, what we take with us aren't possessions or external achievements, but the way we lived, how much we evolved internally, and how we treated others. This means that even people who lived with limitations, without great achievements or recognition, can depart with great fulfillment. What counts is the state of the heart, the willingness to grow, the honesty with which one lived. There's no competition in the spiritual realm. Each soul has its own path, its own measure. This understanding can free many seniors from the weight of regrets, from the idea that they didn't do enough, because in reality, what matters most is the quality of what was lived, and not the quantity of accumulated achievements. From this perspective, even mistakes begin to be seen in a different light. Dolores Cannon said that the soul isn't punished for making mistakes, but learns from the mistake in a deep and true way. This takes guilt out of the center and puts learning in its place. A senior who carries old guilts can find relief in understanding that there's still time to transform these memories into something useful. Sometimes an apology, a letter, a sincere conversation are enough to heal wounds that seemed eternal. The soul responds to truth, and every action done with sincerity reverberates beyond the physical plane. That's why it's never too late to start over, even if time seems short. The soul doesn't measure by the days, but by the intention, and it's precisely this intention that can give new meaning to the last chapters of life, filling them with authenticity, affection, and peace. Dolores also said that, upon crossing to the other side, the soul undergoes a process of disidentification with the body. This means that many pains, limitations, and sufferings are left behind, like vestiges of an overcome experience. For many seniors who live with illnesses, this idea brings comfort, knowing that the pain doesn't follow the soul, that it's part only of the physical body, helps to face reality with more courage. According to her, the soul recognizes itself as something greater, lighter, more connected with the whole. And this recognition is liberating. There's no more shame, fear, or insecurity. There's clarity and welcoming. This doesn't nullify the challenges faced here, but shows that they're part of a larger process. Knowing that there's something beyond, and that something is loving and understanding, transforms the way one faces the present and what is yet to come. Furthermore, the idea that we continue learning even after death can take away the pressure of absolute success. Dolores stated that it's not necessary to be perfect, nor to have all the answers. What matters is the sincerity with which we seek to evolve. Even in the spiritual realm, we continue to expand, knowing new dimensions, reuniting with souls with whom we have deep bonds, and participating in new learning experiences. For the senior who feels that time is scarce, this vision broadens the possibilities. The journey doesn't end here, it merely changes environment. And this new environment, according to so many accounts that Dolores gathered, is lighter, fairer, and more loving than we can imagine. This certainty can bring serenity, not as an empty promise, but as an invitation to live the now well, trusting that tomorrow, even invisible, is in good hands. Trust in this process doesn't require blind faith. It requires listening, reflection, and openness. Dolores Cannon didn't want people to believe everything she said, but to test within themselves what made sense The same goes for you. Each one has their time and their way of understanding. But at least allowing yourself to consider these possibilities is already a step towards peace. It's not about convincing, but about broadening the vision. When we talk about life after death, we're not escaping from reality, but getting closer to what it can mean. For those in their senior years, this reflection can be a gift, a silent but powerful support for the days when uncertainty weighs heavily. And if this touches you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. This conversation may be difficult, but it can also be the beginning of a new tranquility for many. If this video brought calm to your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we always seek to treat deep themes with respect, clarity, and humanity. The journey of life is complex, full of unexpected turns and unanswered questions. But one thing is certain, no one is alone on this path. And if there's something that Dolores Cannon's work teaches us, it's that the end isn't the end, it's just a new beginning, silent, serene, and full of meaning. May you continue your journey with more peace in your chest, with more lightness in your thoughts, and with the certainty that your story matters. Each chapter lived leaves marks on the world and on the soul, and when the time comes to depart, may it be with gratitude, with the feeling of a mission accomplished, and with the confidence that what comes next is as real as everything you've lived until now.